Hello, I'm Art Francisco.
And I'm Andrew G.
And this is the Marxist Line. To hear more about the Marxist Line, please join in the conversation at r/Marxist_USCA.
Or, yeah. Oh, yeah. You already. Yeah. We just talked to. Hello?
Yes?
Check. My mic cut out here. Okay. Can you hear me, Art?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, so this week we are going to, in current events, we're going to have, kind of an informal discussion on a couple of panel events, and we're going to highlight the Zoom meeting from Lausan, because last week Art forgot to turn on the sound for 40 minutes into our show, and then finally somebody tuned in and told us your sound was off. So thank you for that. So we're going to talk about Lenin, Luna the Boys podcast, and that's our current events section. Art, what's going on in theory and state of movement?
We'll talk about Earth Day and the Communist Voiced's response to Greta Thunberg, as well as Michael Roberts and his thoughts on crypto, NFTs, and SPACs.
Right. So let's talk about the Lausan meeting that we both watched last week.
Yeah. So Lausan had a conference, or had a online meeting last week that Andrew and we both checked out, and like the point of the meeting was to talk about immigration laws in the United States, and like what lessons that Hong Kongers could learn from, and it was basically talking about like immigration rights and how to help immigrants. But I mean, both of us attended that meeting. It was on Zoom, and it was just kind of directionless. Like it didn't have a lot of direction to it, and it felt like the agenda was weak.
Which is surprising because they put out good stuff, but I mean, I haven't seen this panel before, so maybe like I said last week, it might have been just chalked up to inexperience, but it was all over the place, so I couldn't really follow, and I thought they were going to lead into something, but there wasn't really a head. It didn't really follow what the discussion said it was going to be about, really.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of, there were some disappointing points made, in my opinion, about about local migrant worker rights in the Hong Kong area, and how to integrate the interests and what those migrant workers wanted with the broader movement in Hong Kong. And if I remember right, someone on the panel basically said, look, now's not the time for it. We have our hands full, with Chinese authoritarianism. And it's like I thought the whole point of the panel was to address this issue. So it's like, if now's not the time, then when, right? And
I mean, because the panel was supposed to be about U.S. migrant workers too, but also like from a Hong Kong perspective. But even at that, like he's just and I mean, it is an important issue, because because when they did talk about U.S. migrants, and because it was a good topic at the time because of the racial mass shootings in the U.S., the recent ones, they didn't talk about how they talked about how badly they're treated in the U.S., but the same is just as prevalent in I lived over there and saw it in Hong Kong and Taiwan on like how, like how Filipino workers and stuff were treated there, or any migrant
Right.
workers were treated there. It's very classist, very classist. So yeah, I mean, and Art brought up that question, and it was a good question. And yeah, like the guy said, he's like, well, understand we should be talking about it, but people, they can't focus on this. And yeah, exactly. We're never going to get anywhere if we don't talk about these things as a coherent whole.
Right. So before we move on to talk about like the rest of our current events, let's I kind of ran it by Andrew at the last minute to talk about what's going on in India with the second wave of COVID and the Communist Party of India's like statements on it. And so because I don't really follow like the TV news like very closely. I kind of rely on other people telling me what is basically the big thing that TV news is talking about. Because TV news tends to find a story and then just recycle it over and over and over again for like 4 days straight. And so, right? And so, but it was, I was talking.
Sorry, can I ask you like what, I mean, because I have a couple like mainstream places that I look beyond, like Marxist news and stuff. But I mean, mine's usually now is Al Jazeera.
Yeah,
What's yours?
I do watch Al Jazeera.
I mean, it's better than a lot of that for that area.
I do try to check the papers.
Yeah.
I just haven't been doing it in the last week or two.
Yeah.
And so, but it was kind of brought to my attention that India's having this pretty fierce second wave, and so Ben Seattle actually brought it up to me, and so I was like, okay, I'll look into it because I didn't know about it really. It wasn't really surprising to me, but yeah, I haven't been keeping up on it, and so I was like, well, I wonder if like the Communist parties of India have said anything about it, and sure enough, they pretty much both of the CPI communist parties had something to say about it, but as like, okay, so CPIM, brought up like the kind of conditions that are going on there, that as far, I mean, going on in India, how like the hospitals are overwhelmed, and and like general all these grievances about how poorly managed it is. But their criticism of the second wave and the government's reaction to it has been very liberal, in my opinion. And they have resisted, from what I can tell, calls to like for Modi to resign, or for any other politicians to resign.
Yeah.
Like there's been resistance for like actually calling for some real action in response to this. And so in my opinion, their statements on this, despite the gravity, has been fairly weak. And the Communist Party, ML, which is the Maoist Communist Party in India, I'd say it's kind of very similar. There's a lot of like complaints about the grievances, how there's not enough vaccines, how like the death toll is likely way more than what's officially reported, how there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough masks, there's all these super spreading events and stuff. But like all of those grievances, like, and concerns are also like, that's also in the mainstream liberal media. Like, that's not like that. There's nothing revolutionary about talking about those concerns in and of themselves. there's no solutions, there's no call for solutions like that differentiate them from
Well,
liberalism.
yeah. I mean, there's one of the articles, the All India protest against Modi's government anti-policies. They have like four kind of suggestions, right? But it's not, in my opinion, all three of these articles should have been combined together. But I mean,
two are from a different party, and so
yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying, though. They should all be like kind of, cause yeah. But anyways, yeah, that's the June 17th one. Oh yeah, this one's kind of old, isn't it?
yeah, um,
Okay.
and so, but like this one that's like May 2021, like the thing is like there's no real calls to hold Modi accountable,
Yeah.
and all of uh his uh his followers, right? Like that, like there's no real call to hold all of them accountable, to hold their political party accountable, to say, hey, look, this is the result of their freaking backwards political party and their Hindu religious extremism, and where they basically think it's they denounce science, and then they have these super spreading like religious rallies, and political rallies for their reelection. It's like there's nothing really like, hey, like these people are like this whole political party is a cancer to the masses in India.
Yeah, and
Like,
I think that's, because reading past posts by the party and stuff, yeah, it does read kind of liberal, and and I'm just looking at the polls now over Modi, and I mean, there's a reason. I mean, he's still popular, in the general polls up until recently and stuff, and there's never going to be a challenge unless there's a you know, serious like critique from like parties that are organized and correct, and know what they're talking about, and holding actual accountability instead of like, because we read one, I remember last year, where it was like basically begging the government, well, I can't remember exactly what it said, but about like, oh well, please don't shut down our munitions plant
right.
and stuff. Remember that article?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so like I mean, I challenge any comrades in India to show us like an impressive statement on this disaster that's happening in India. Now, I'm not saying that like, hey, we're doing it better in the United States, because like we're not, but
yeah,
but, but like, I mean, like I have the same criticism like of most comrades in the United States, but but like,
makes sense. We're both. It's all
right,
capitalist countries. Yeah.
yeah, but we have to, like, this is just not acceptable to me, like, um yeah, so let's just move on, like.
So over to John at Oakland Socialist.
So he has some thoughts. I mean, John's been following the Derek Chauvin trial pretty closely. Derek Chauvin is the cop who was kneeling on the neck of George Floyd for almost 10 minutes after they put him in handcuffs and threw him in the back of a police car and wrestled him out of the police car on face down on the ground. And this is all while he was in handcuffs. And so he's been on trial for second-degree murder and manslaughter.
Yeah.
And so the trial was pretty, I would say it was very high profile. It was basically like dinner table conversation all over the country. And because it was probably the most high profile like police trial since Rodney King.
Yeah.
Now, what's significant is that I would say most police officers are like not held accountable, right? And like they're not. And that was the thing with Rodney King. Like everybody was acquitted,
Yeah.
you know, despite beating up Rodney King. Nobody was found guilty. But yeah, with this, like kind of everybody was expecting the same thing. But it you know, he was found guilty on all 3 charges.
And so what do you think about what John says? Do you think that this, this overwhelming like protests and stuff, it shows that it, that put a lot of pressure on the, on the capitalist class and the police?
Yeah, well, I do think that all the protests have been putting pressure on the capitalist class, and that basically Derek Chauvin's been a sort of sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
To placate the masses. Now, because really, I mean, yeah, he's a cop. He's a nobody.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, like, police are really not very important people in society. It's okay to get rid of a cop if that's going to calm everybody down and keep like the protests from growing.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of, it sounds like that's kind of what John's take on it is as well.
Yeah, I liked it, and I also liked too that he included like hyperlinks to, these statistics, that I was talking about too, and then links to other articles about some of the history and stuff. So props to John for doing that. On top of like his argument, I like the structure of this, the way he structured it too, with the links to all this, to the evidence and everything.
Yeah, I'm also glad that he mentioned the anti-riot laws that seem to be passing in the Deep South.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar, like in the U.S. and in the southern, mainly in the southern states, like the Republican states, they've been passing these anti-riot laws where they can basically, it makes it easier for them to charge protesters with rioting, which is a felony. And that means prison time.
Yeah.
So there's like, I mean, I don't really know exactly what the ramifications of that's going to be, but it's going to make it more difficult to protest. It's an intimidation thing.
Yeah, it's weird. I just want to kind of like, while we're on the police subject, because it's weird, because I've been seeing a lot of U.S. people talk about like these draconian laws, like both in BC here and in Ontario that came in last week, that were like, they're going to have roadside checks and restrictions on people traveling and checking for people to travel. And both, this was like like announced by like the premiers of both provinces, and actually both the police unions in both provinces said they wouldn't enforce it.
Huh.
They said that that's overstepping, civil liberties and stuff. So
what's the point of the checkpoints?
So you're not allowed to travel outside of your area or your district, because there's been a massive spike in both BC, where I live, and Ontario in the last, in this third wave, that like the hospitals are over.
Oh, because of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry to get off topic. I just, since we talked about COVID on India and then cops here, I just kind of wanted to mention
they don't
that.
want
and
people spreading COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess, well, maybe I'll find an article about it next week, because this is something I want to talk deeper, and we got a bunch of other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
So another thing uh, is like John had or hosted. Maybe it wasn't just John. I think someone from like an activist from Chicago also like co-hosted a event on what's going on in Myanmar with
Yeah.
the uprising over there, the protests. What I didn't know is that there's like a large uh, Myanmar like Burmese community in Chicago and I think also in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so and there is also there's a domestic Rohingya community which I wasn't really aware of and kind of separate from the Burmese community even though they're both from Myanmar.
Yeah.
And so the Rohingyans, of course, have been protesting because of what's been going on there with the Rohingya people, and so they've been collaborating more, and they've also been working with like Thai activists and Hong Konger activists, and activists from Tibet and Mongolia, and that's what they're calling the Milk Tea Alliance, right?
Yeah.
And so Sean had a panel discussion kind of thing, like a group meeting. It's fairly informal. It was talking about Myanmar. It had a
When
couple.
did that happen? I didn't. I know
That
we
was
talked about it,
last
but I
week,
missed it.
and I kind of got it like last minute, so I wasn't
Okay.
able to send it to you.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like it's fairly informal, and there was an activist on the ground in Myanmar talking about it, and there was some questions about like the attitude of most people toward the military and the different like liberal parties and what they're planning on doing, as well as there's talks about the different paramilitary groups. So basically, all these oppressed ethnicities there in that country have formed over the years their own paramilitaries to defend their ethnic groups or their ethnic communities. And so those paramilitaries, have been skirmishing with the government, with the national military,
Yeah.
and there's been rumors and talks of forming a federal army. So basically, of kind of trying to unite these different paramilitary groups into a more organized army to fight the military. So basically, it's like there's rumors of like there's definitely like thought of like civil war going through like the minds of people in Myanmar. Like, no, I don't
It's
think.
interesting. I mean, yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I'd like to know more about like how much how much paramilitary or guerrilla warfare or potential for that is there. I mean,
Right.
could see this. I could see what would happen in Syria, with Iraq and stuff. But I mean, or before the setup of the Vietnam War. But I haven't heard very much about Myanmar and the paramilitary groups there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some parallels with Syria. Um, and like there is, I think there was like an attack by the military on some activists, and they killed some activists.
And so
And
would you?
in retaliation, there is an ambush on the military itself.
And would you say they are mostly, or do you know if they're left wing or right wing paramilitary? Kind
Uh,
of majority, because
I mean, I would call them all like fairly nationalist, like
okay, yeah,
they're not communist groups. I mean, like some
yeah,
of them are probably Islamist groups, I'm sure some of the Rohingya and groups are Islamist,
yeah,
like but so it's going to like I don't really know how that's going to develop
nationalist
over
groups.
time.
I would consider that like, because to put in perspective, like from like the forming of Israel, like a lot of their paramilitary groups were like the Haganah, like the, that, you know, formed the basis of the far right Likud party these days. A lot of the military actions that happened before were like the far right. But would you consider that nationalist also in the same sense? Is that what you were saying there?
Oh,
That's what I'm saying because the Likud party is very far right. But I mean, it's not. But you don't see a potential like there's a big communist movement in
right.
Myanmar. You just
Um,
see it as a more of a nationalist coalition to get rid of like the military
yeah,
junta.
I'd say it's far more liberal than communist.
Okay.
And my position on these things. I think
Mm,
like even if the liberals were leading the movement, even if like the majority sentiment in Myanmar were liberal, and it's just we just want democratic rights and
Yeah, I
uh,
mean that's the
uh,
first step
yeah, I think
that
that's still a
anybody's.
step forward.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that's still a huge step forward for Myanmar if they were able to get rid of the military or well, to basically defang it, right? And so and then I had some questions about like, well, is there like any agitation toward the military or an attempt to split? I mean, to split the current
like
national military.
that happened in Syria. Do you
Yeah,
see?
because
Yeah, I mean, do you see that as a lot like a big split from the military as potential, or you just don't know yet?
well when they responded, they didn't see it as there's a lot of potential in that, but
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, that's essential. If they
Oh,
are
absolutely.
serious
If you
about
want to,
breaking the
yeah,
grip of the military, they're going to have to figure out a way to split the military
yeah, absolutely,
and
yeah,
split the rank and file soldiers away.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, and then so um, extending further, uh, yesterday there was a Uyghur panel on Socialist Alternative, and
Yeah, you said that to me, but I didn't get a chance to watch it. I mean, I was just
I
getting
only
home at
watched
the
a
end of
little
it.
bit, and
Yeah.
here's why. Like
Why?
I was actually interested in it, um, but the the way that and and sorry, this is not Socialist Alternative. This was Socialist. What the hell is it? Action or no Resurgence.
Socialist resurgence, yeah. Okay.
Let me just fix this. So it was Socialist Resurgence that put it together, and the thing is, like, they had their panel, they disabled the chat. So there's so basically
Disable the
so
chat.
this is a
Fuck.
Zoom meeting, right? And you know how Zoom meeting has the talking
Yeah.
heads. They made it so you can't see all the talking heads for one, and then for two, the chat was disabled, so it was just like listening to a lecture of someone's opinion on it, and which I didn't really agree with. But there's no room for side conversations or
Yeah,
for
I hate
serious
that. That's
challenges to the speakers.
that. Why don't you just post an article or something? Yeah, if you can't
Post a YouTube
interact.
video. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so I was a little annoyed by it. I felt like it was a waste of my time
yeah,
to listen to someone whose opinion I obviously didn't agree with, who I couldn't even challenge.
yeah.
Like, so it's like, well, what's the point of me listening to this person? And it's obviously I think it's important what's going on with the Uyghurs, but as far as like disabling the chat, it's 2021.
Yeah,
It's like the 21st century. Get with the times.
yeah.
Like, if you can't take a little criticism, like every liberal can take criticism, why can't like people in the Marxist community take criticism? you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, so
All right,
yeah,
so
so
on
moving
to
on.
Luna Oi. She had, and her talks are usually pretty good. And I caught the gist of it, but
Hi
we were talking
everybody,
about
I'm
before
Luna.
the show, and I felt it was vague, and it wasn't like a couple other things. When she really talks about Vietnam, she like has, she shows articles to their constitution or links to this and that. But I did think it was kind of vague. I'm like, she talks about it, in the law. Maybe she'll have a expand on that or whatever. But my thoughts initially too were kind of vague about it. So I mean, what else was like a flag to you, or did you? I mean,
Well, you're
what
talking.
did you
Well,
think?
let's first like tell other people what we're talking about, because
Oh yeah. Oh well. Yeah. I mean, anyways, yeah.
so like Luda
Labor
Oi,
rights in Vietnam, but it's up on the sorry, it's up on the. I
yes,
thought
yes.
I'm not watching the feed. You usually bring it up on the feed and stuff, so I'm sorry. I did not. I did not. I'm not watching the feed.
Yeah,
Anyways,
so
labor rights
right.
in Vietnam. So, what do you want to expand on that,
Yeah,
Art?
so this is supposed to be like a video to talk about the trade unions and labor rights in Vietnam and the trade unions in Vietnam and how that works. And like to me it like Luna's presentation, it seemed almost like a reading off of Wikipedia for some of this, and that's not always a bad thing, but I felt like this was like a very official like description of what's going on there, with the trade unions and and the trade union the history that she presented is interesting. Like I don't, I don't disagree with it, but like I at least I don't know what to disagree with right now. So, like,
Neither do I. And what came to my mind, my question was, well, I mean, she talked about like a national organization and their
right, like a
yeah,
federation of unions.
how does that differ from China? Like, because in Vietnam, from what she said, you can form separate unions. You can't do that in China, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like the Vietnamese Federation of Trade Unions, they don't call it that, but the Vietnamese Federation of Trade Unions, um, it sounds like it's has more independence from the party based on her description, whereas
Yeah.
in China, it's not independent from the party. Now, but she didn't do a very good job, in my opinion, of like explaining like that difference, because that is important. Like, because
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think it is important, but
she didn't
I
even
would like
mention
to.
the trade unions in China.
What's that?
She didn't even mention the trade unions in China
Yeah.
because, like, because to like, okay, because that's the thing. It's like, okay, so if there's a federation in Vietnam, right, of trade unions, like, to me, one of the first questions is like, well, how is it different from the federation in China?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was my question. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she avoided that question entirely. Maybe it didn't cross her mind, but I think that's important.
Yeah, I will. This is definitely important too, because I mean, this is the whole. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to see another video with more information on this from her. But in the meantime, I would like to do. I mean, how much research have you done into the trade unions in Vietnam
I haven't done
so far?
much, so like that's why I said that. Hey, I don't really know exactly what I disagree with at this time.
Yeah.
Like I mean, the video is like her presentation is better than no presentation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good first step.
Right, but like, because there aren't any presentations really on the trade unions in Vietnam, so it's interesting to get her take.
Yeah.
her take just kind of comes off to me as kind of like this is like an official party take on what's going on, and instead of like a a very informed like trade unionist take,
Yeah.
or from like a rank and file worker or anything, or or from, so it's like uh it's like how much is sugar coated, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is like there's comparisons to the US trade unions, and like basically the conditions for workers here in the United States, like there's like welfare comparisons, right? And so so Luna tries to use these kind of welfare comparisons to say, hey, like look, it's like the trade unions are definitely doing a very good job, and it just seemed a little uncritical to me.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, she,
like it
yeah,
kind of
she
made me
did
raise an
mention the
eyebrow.
one
Like really,
violent
like
incident, but she put it off to provocateurs, and she'd do a video on that. So, I mean, I'm not really familiar with that situation, but yeah, I hope she talks more about this and that other event or whatever.
yes, the thing seemed a little bit sugar coated. And while on the topic of like Luna Oi, when I was like in uh the Myanmar meeting, there is a Vietnamese activist there, and I asked her, like, kind of in a side conversation, what do you think about uh, Luna Oi? And she said, well, she tends to, strongly, uh, like, push the Vietnamese Communist Party line on
Yeah.
things, and I think that sounds very accurate, actually,
Yeah.
from what
Yeah.
I've seen of Luna. And so, like, as always, I mean, we cover Luna because she's putting out content, and she's like a big voice. She's a growing voice, and people are listening to her, and it's starting conversations. But hey, if you're in Vietnam, if you're a comrade in Vietnam, and I know there's plenty in Vietnam, you want to give us your 2 cents or point us to something that you think we should read or see, you're always welcome to. We have the Reddit link below, and so like, if you think that what Luna is saying here is correct, or if it's bullshit, please let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on Reddit. We want to see what you have to say.
Yeah. All right. Lenin's birthday. You posted something about Lenin, so why don't you give a little rundown on what you think about Lenin and his impact?
Yeah. I didn't say anything on his birthday, actually. Like, I waited a day, but
Shame on you.
yeah.
Bad Marxist.
So
Bad Marxist.
I wanted to see what other people had to say, and this is kind of like a yearly tradition with like Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Marx, where on their birthday, it's like we have to put together like a kind of obligatory picture or quote or statement or article with like their or 3 favorite books or pamphlets by them. And and so Lenin's been no different. Like there's a few groups that put out like our favorite Lenin article or our favorite Lenin book, so our little reading list, and how, and pretty much I think like most of the Marxist community agrees that he's a pretty important figure, and like I wanted to think about it and because I understand that there's like, for people that aren't in the Marxist community, there's a lot of like
misinformation.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation and you know, and a lot of people hear Lenin and it's like, oh, scary, you know. And
Yeah.
you know, that Lenin, that's scary, right? And so, like, so who was he? And it's like, well, so I know I posted on my wall like uh Lenin is probably, in my opinion, he's one of, if not the most influential figure in the 20th century. And my argument for that is several fold. Uh, you know, as most people know, he's basically the main architect of the Russian Revolution, and he was basically the glue that held the Bolsheviks together.
Yeah.
And so, and that in that, he was also like their main theoretician, and that meant forming a new workers' international, the Third International, and it also meant taking a line on a world where most countries are colonies. Like on my wall hangs an old map. It's a map of the world, and it's like in the map of the world. It's an interesting map because it's an old colonial map of the world where it shows which countries own which countries. Like you can't find these maps anymore, but like they're really like, yeah, we talk about like neo-colonialism these days, but I mean the bread and butter colonization is not really well known in like the newer, you know, millennial and Generation Z.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that is the legacy of Lenin. You know, basically ending colonialism, coming up with a theory of imperialism, and you know, and like understanding what it is so it can be fought. And so that's a part of that legacy, as well as anti-racism and you know, giving people of all different kinds of people around the world a place at the table. So yeah, to me, it's pretty influential, and basically he kickstarted the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union ended up, you know,
a Stalinist bureaucracy.
Yeah, but even as a Stalinist bureaucracy, it still did good.
Yeah.
Like
it.
You know.
Absolutely, and I mean that's. I mean, we can talk about Stalin separately, but yeah, I mean, I've wrote about what we talked about before the show.
The good works that the Soviet Union was pushing out was not Stalin's ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I mean,
like it was bigger than him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it was built from nothing. Like it was all destroyed. The whole Soviet Union was destroyed after World War II.
Right.
And then they had a civil war, and it was destroyed from the first war, and then, you know, years of like that freaking monarchy and everything like that, or whatever it's called in Russian, the Tsarist monarchy.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, good step forwards.
Yeah, and so I understand, like, people want to know, like, well, for one, you're not going to usually find, like, the 10 best quotes of Lenin that are really worth your time reading. Like, you know, like, there's a lot of great quotes by him, but they're not compiled into, like, a 10 best quotes list or anything like that. You're probably just going to have to read Lenin to find those quotes. And, you know, and so there's a gold mine of information. You just have to read Lenin. And whereas a lot of groups are like, well, you should read, you know, imperialism, and then you should read like State and Revolution, and then you should read what's the other big one? What is to be done? And like, yeah, like I think those are definitely worth reading. But I think for people that are really getting into Lenin, like, probably probably their best bet, in my opinion, is to find like a selected works anthology that has like basically several dozen of his writings. Most of his writing's pretty short. It's not like it's 100 pages a book, so
Yeah.
you can fit it all into
Pretty
like a
accessible.
300
Yeah.
page book. And
Yeah.
and so it's actually, in my opinion, it's better to just read like a selected works, so you can read basically several books and get a better like understanding for the context and like the time that those books were written, so like the order that they were written in, and to avoid all the, you know, all the third party opinions and stuff, and just kind of so you can form your own opinion on them.
All right.
Yeah.
Good advice. All right, let's theory and state of movement. And I noticed you posted this in our Reddit page, so I was reading over. Why don't you
yeah, and I did that.
Give us
I did that because Frank didn't. Like he didn't post it on his own website, or Joseph Green didn't. And so like really like yeah, so
and it's a comment by, you know, on a statement by Greta Thunberg. And we said before too, you know, she needs to become more radical, and it sounds like she's coming, you know, she's talking a little more radical than, you know, than before, and as far as what's said in this statement.
Yeah, and so she's I think she's from Sweden, right? And so yeah, so she's getting older, a little bit older, and she's getting a little bit wiser and more experienced. And so she's becoming less and less of this cute, harmless little Swedish girl that, you know, that wants to protest for climate, you know, against climate change, and be basically a little mascot, right, for Greenpeace. And so the cuteness is fading. And so what she's saying, like, I mean, I think she said some interesting stuff for a while now, I think. But
me too. And I mean, I think it's very, like, I mean, I wish I was at that stage when I was 18.
Right. And so basically Joseph Biden is pushing the United States into you know, back into the Paris Agreement kind of stuff. And they're talking about, oh, well, we're going to go zero emissions by 2050, and, you know, and we're going to promote Tesla cars. Like, and NEO, and, you know,
green capitalism.
And we're going to, you know, and then General Motors is going to start making electric vehicles by 2035, and Ford is making an electric Mustang, and we're going to invest more into like lithium ion and that kind of thing. And so like so all, yeah, it's all green capitalism. And Thunberg basically says, hey, look, this is just bullshit. Like and like I think that's a very honest answer. And CVO basically says, hey, she's right to say that, and that this is all basically bullshit, that nothing's really changing too much. It's not changing fast enough. And they mention, she also said, look, this is just designed to fool people, but you can't fool nature and physics. I actually really like that line that she delivered there. I was looking for where exactly I couldn't find where she delivered this line, but it looks like it's cited. But yeah, no, I like that line. You can't fool nature and physics. Now Now, of course, the other end is like we have like all these kind of like nonprofits and stuff that we're depending on to lead environmentalism, right? I mean, us, and what I mean by we is, and I mean like humanity. Like there's no revolutionary movement for, for environmentalism. There's none of that. It's, in fact, if any, I think in a lot of ways, environmentalism is very weak right now.
Yeah.
And so, even though Thunberg is kind of the face of it, now, and it's become weaker, I think, under Trump. But that said, like the big thing in my opinion is that, like, look, the Marxist community is very weak. There's no political group that's really able to step up to the plate. There's no political ideology ready to step up to the plate, and to lead activists in this regard. And I think it's more of the fault of that situation than like the fault of like Thunberg. Why things are wrong, like and like,
yeah, I mean, especially, yeah, because I mean, for her saying stuff like this, I mean, it's not, yeah, I mean, most of the environmental groups now are liberal and stuff, so I mean, it's basically, yeah, it's beyond what they're doing too, but she doesn't have any other, like you said, big other groups to that are organized that we need in the Marxist community for people like her to latch onto or to be a part of.
Yeah, there's really nothing else to be a part of. And like CVO says, I think CVO is right, or Joseph Green is right when he writes, I think it's Joseph Green that wrote this. Yeah, just make sure it's not Frank that wrote this. But I think he's right when he says that we can't let environmentalism be dominated by the establishment environmentalists. But okay, so it's not going to be dominated by the establishment we don't want it being dominated by the establishment environmentalists. Who else is going to dominate it? I mean, because there's no other political force. There's no other organizational force. They're simply filling in a vacuum. And it's it's my opinion that, like, we have to make an effort to unite the Marxist community and to get serious about uniting it and organizing and cooperating. If we want to change this. Simple as that.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, on to Michael Roberts' blog and his. I like this. I mean, it's obviously, coinciding with what's going on in the market right now. Because I mean, you're doing that right now.
Sure.
So why don't you talk about this one? Because I usually like talking about it, but I'm not following the cryptocurrency or anything that's going on right now.
Okay, so there's been a big crypto boom in the last year, since 2020. Bitcoin last year in 2020, around March, was worth like 6,000, and then last week it was worth like 65,000. And right now I think it's around 48 or 49. It just dipped under 50,000 per coin. And it's brought up like all of the cryptos. Pretty much all the cryptos follow Bitcoin. And so that's been a big boom. And a part of that was because banks started investing into crypto, because billionaires see crypto jumping, like, with these huge gains, and like they want to be a part of it, right? Like, they don't want to be left out. And so banks have gotten involved in crypto, and that's boosted the price further. And there's been easier access to crypto with like phone applications to buying and selling crypto, and so that's also boosted the prices further. Now, what Robert says about like, hey, you can't really do much with your crypto. I mean, I think that's mostly true, unless you're gonna buy Mavericks tickets with Dogecoin. But
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope is that they want to move to it, but I've never been a fan of it because I see it as like basically, because Roberts talks about it as is not quite the same, but almost like gold.
yeah,
Go and
I think that's fair. I think it's fair. It's kind of like a digital gold, basically.
Yeah,
And and as I see it, like there's a like it's it's gone up, right? Like it's skyrocketed, crypto skyrocketed based on speculation that it's going to become that crypto, either Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of these crypto coins or several, is going to become important down the road.
yeah.
Like that that's sooner or later these are going to become more and more mainstream, and they're going to be adopted more and more, and they will be important down the road. And so there's a lot of speculation on this, and which is making the prices soar, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear earlier this year of inflation, right? And what happens when people are scared of inflation? They throw money into gold. They didn't throw money into gold this year. They threw it into crypto, which boosted the prices of crypto, which made people invest more money into crypto.
Yes.
So, and the volatility is even more of a reason to get in, because if crypto is doing these big waves up and down, then then there's more potential to make money on it.
Now, I mean, do you think this can be used in a good way for, eventually for the working class as like, I mean, I was against it for the reason that the way that, anytime, if it's in a market and stuff that, I'm all for these, of something the whole world can use that can't be manipulated, but,
right.
it's
crypto can definitely be manipulated.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because
so, I mean,
it's being manipulated by the whales. So the big, the whales are like the people that hold a lot of crypto, right?
Yeah.
And so and the whales are the billionaires, of course, just like everything else.
Yeah.
And so the whales can buy or sell their crypto at like the drop of a hat right now. They can't do that with stocks.
Yeah.
Like they can sell a lot of stocks and it'll manipulate the stocks some, but they do have some limits on how much they can buy and sell.
Do you think this is all like the recent action? Because I was thinking about this earlier. The recent move on to cryptocurrency and the amount of volume also has to do with like a historically low dropout in shorting stocks, because we're at an all-time low, because I mean hedge funds are scared to go into short. Yeah, they're getting destroyed.
You can't short crypto.
No, I know, but do you think that money is being, there is more action there now from these people, these hedge funds are looking at these now? I mean, have you
I don't really
heard
know
anything of that?
I mean, I know there's been a couple big losers of hedge funds, but as I understand it, most of the hedge funds are actually doing well.
Yeah.
Which is like the real story. Like with the hedge funds, is most are not affected by Wall Street bets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're doing pretty well. You'd have to be. You're taking a big risk by shorting GameStop in the last few months. Like that's like the one you got to be very careful of. The whole stock market is watching GameStop the whole time since January. that is like the most high risk thing you can do is to buy and sell GameStop. And so like most hedge funds are not into that. You know, they see the Wall Street bets stocks. They see that they're doing these huge spikes and huge, you know, downfalls.
Yeah.
And it's,
well,
it's
a lot
very
of
easy
some of
to
those
lose
hedge
your butt
funds
off
too,
on it.
you know, do like high frequency trading and stuff too. So it's kind of, it's kind of fucking with their high frequency trading algorithms and everything like that too.
Yeah.
So, but I mean,
yeah, I don't like. There's a lot of other things for them to short. Like Neo, for example, was a big one. You know, and that like, and the Chinese stocks were shorted a lot. I don't think right now, but they were for the last few months. And so like there's plenty of other things for them to short. But the thing is with crypto, I mean, it's gone down in the last week because there's rumors that there's going to be more regulation, and it always goes down when there's rumors of regulation. Which I think is, I don't really think it's going to be a permanent thing, actually. I think it's going to dip down maybe for a month at the very most, but probably more like for a couple weeks, and then it's going to bounce right back up. Because when it dips down from 65,000 to 48,000, perfect time if you have $1 billion to buy some. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Like, not with Mark Cuban and all the big, you know, a bunch of big billionaires pumping it up. Now, the NFTs are basically like digital pictures, right? They're basically like JPEGs that are locked in on blockchain, and so you can't copy them really. And they're owned, and so they have a digital ledger saying who was the previous owner, just like a crypto coin, and that's what the blockchain is. And so the NFTs have kind of become a hot thing. There's NFT stocks, of course, just like there's cryptocurrency stocks, like on the stock market, not just crypto itself. And of course, like a couple of these NFTs have been sold for a few $1 million, and then a lot of them aren't. But the NFTs are very, very highly speculative right now, I think. And nobody really knows what's going to happen with them. There's a few millionaires trying to pump them up or really into them. I think Playboy magazine said that, or they're no longer a magazine, they're like Industries or something, said they're going to get into NFTs, which pumped them up. But nobody really knows what's going to go on with NFTs, whether it's a temporary fad or like, which is what everybody said was the deal with crypto like 4 years ago. They said it was a temporary fad, and we're still talking about crypto, and even more so than ever. So there's a lot of speculation that NFTs will be like crypto, and that from 4 years from now, you'll wish you got into NFTs. And that's driving up prices of NFTs and NFT stocks and all that crap. And so, and why companies are talking about getting into NFTs. But all of there's a lot of speculation, basically. And that speculation is producing volatility. And I kind of think a lot of it's driven by, like, very wealthy people not knowing what to do with their money. Kind of like how they used to buy Picasso paintings, right? Like they used to buy Picasso paintings and Rembrandts and you know, and Van Goghs and Banksy's. and you know, and then they used to just put it all in a storage locker for a rainy day in case their money goes to shit. They always have those Picasso paintings, you know, with a bag of diamonds and maybe a few bars of gold, and they can pull it out on a rainy day because it's inflation proof. I kind of think it's like that, where they don't know what to spend all this ridiculous amounts of money on. and so they're speculating on all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. All right. Good commentary
and
on that.
the SPACs are another thing. That's basically just that's a holding company. So that is a company that's been set up, put onto the stock market, and its sole purpose is to get people to buy the stock of the SPAC. And
After the IPO, right?
no, it's not an IPO. So this would be
I thought it was after the IPO,
so
or was that? Hold on,
no,
let
it's
me.
not. IPO is an initial public offering. So
No, I know it's different, but I
right.
thought it was like
So the
because it was
traditional
related to
way,
that.
like Coinbase, for example, Coinbase wanted to get on the stock market. It did it through an IPO, an initial public offering, which is the traditional way to get on the stock market. With the SPAC is already on the stock market. It's a complete shell company. The whole purpose is to merge with a company that's not on the stock market. And the merging deal will basically will mean that company that's not on the stock market will take over the SPAC.
I thought it was okay. I'll have to read it again. Okay, because I thought it was also a merge or a split with the because they would have like these new ones after an IPO and this is where the losers would get in. They would try and sell these, or this company would try and get this. They'd either split or merge, and then like the losers would be the small investors or whatever like that.
Yeah, well,
I was half asleep this morning, so
because with an IPO, you can like if you are a millionaire or a billionaire, basically you can jump into a company before it becomes when it's IPO, before it gets on the actual market.
Yeah, I know that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
As a private investor, and then you already have the shares when it goes on the stock market.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why Coinbase was so high when it got on the stock market. But with the SPAC, it's like it's a company that doesn't make anything. It's just there on paper.
Yeah.
And a company, basically, the goal of the SPAC is to use the money that it fundraises on the SPAC through speculation to acquire or to merge with a private company, and that can't or hasn't gotten on the stock market already. And the thing is, the people that are getting in the SPACs, a lot of times they don't know which company the SPAC is going to merge with or acquire. Only the billionaire that owns the SPAC knows this, because he's cutting the deal. Like for most of it, it's that one guy, I forgot what his name is. Initial CP. So
yeah, okay, so here it is. It says these are so-called blank check companies, banks and other hedge funds invest in SPEC, which owns nothing but promises investors that the SPEC will buy a privately owned company, then take it to the stock market in an initial public offering.
Right.
So it was it was kind of like, it was related, but it was like, it was kind of, now I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And so the SPAC is kind of like a shell game, and it's a speculation thing.
Yeah.
One thing is a lot of like smaller investors and working class types and stuff get sucked into these SPACs.
Yeah.
Because they see them jumping, and then and they don't really understand how they work. They get talked a lot on TV and stuff. But they don't understand that basically this is a total like shot in the dark, basically, as far as the company goes.
All right. Yeah, that was. I mean, I haven't heard of SPACs before, but yeah, that was a good article by Roberts again. I'll have to read it again. Do we have any events happening?
Yeah. So right after the show, I know Left Voice is having something. You'll have to check out their site to see it because they don't have it updated. And then the other thing is, I'm trying to remember what Left Voice is talking about, and it slipped my mind. Oh yeah, and then also there is a Marxism Online Festival, which will be in May. And unfortunately, I haven't converted this into Pacific. This is all UK time, United Kingdom, which is like, what is that, UTC -2 or something?
I don't know. We talk about it all the time. I think it's 8 hours.
We get it wrong
Maybe it's
every time too.
9 hours difference for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So this is all in the UK. I'm guessing it's online though. So yeah, that's, if you're interested, you can check that out. It's on the Michael Roberts blog Facebook page to find this. It's also
Okay.
which is also in the link in the show notes.
All right. So what's happening right after the show?
Yeah, I think Left Voice has something going on.
Okay.
Right. Let me see if I think this is it. From this might be it. From Besmer to BLM. Yeah, this might be it here. Oh, maybe it's over. So
I thought that was next. It says Saturday, May 8th and 9th. So I think that's
it
next.
might be.
That's 2 weeks away.
Yeah. Oh, and it looks like Denver Communists has something going on Sunday, May 2, 2021, 1 p.m. UTC -7. So that'll be right after May 1st. So anyway, a few things. I think it's generally worth it to try to check out the events of other groups, even if you disagree with them.
Yeah, like we do.
But that's all I have. Andrew, do you have anything else?
No, that's good. Yeah, it was good. Thanks everyone that tuned in this week, and we'll see you again same time